Buddy, this is Gary. It looks like we 3 or 4 members of the advisory group, so go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody. Like Bree said, we're going to talk mostly about the structures presentation that you guys heard on Tuesday, and really dig into it and get your feedback, answer any questions, hopefully, that you might have about it. As I said, I'm Gary Heitman. I'm with the LCP team, the assistant program manager. And with us, we've got, hopefully, Steve Haynes. Is he?
Hey, Steve Haynes, can you hear me?
Yeah, there he is.
Okay, yeah. My video.
I didn't see you show up there for a second. Great. Steve Haynes is our expert, one of our bridge experts with the team. So he's going to kind of help guide us through the discussion today. And we really do want it to be a discussion. You know, we want to get your input and your feedback, particularly today about the structures. We're going to have many other opportunities to talk about different elements, but like Bree and others, Tim, have said that this is an ongoing process to get feedback. And I want to say too that you guys are just one of the means of getting feedback. We've got some local community-based meetings that will be scheduled throughout the period, as well as you guys. And we're going to have the more formal NEPA environmental phase type public meetings. So lots of opportunity to get your feedback. All of you guys should be unmuted right now, except for the public. The public, we're going to try to keep muted just so we can hear what all of the advisory group folks have to say, and make sure we have plenty of time to address your concerns and comments. But everybody, as part of the advisory group, should be unmuted, and it looks like you are. So if you have trouble with that, Anthony, I guess you're the one who can kind of unmute this room. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So we're going to do our best to answer your questions today. You know, like I said, Steve and I are here. We got Brent with the DOTD team. He's going to be kind of floating in and out the rooms. And we'll have other bridge experts and CSS type experts, environmental experts, DOTD staff kind of coming and going also. So you'll see their face pop up occasionally as well. And like Bree said, once we conclude, we got about 50 minutes to an hour. And once we conclude, everybody will just, you'll get a message to go back to the main meeting. So we'll try that. Like I said before, we really want to hear from each of you. So please be respectful of everybody's opinions and time, and make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak if they so desire. So I think with that, Steve, I'll turn it over to you, unless you or Anthony see something else that we need to address early.
All right, thanks, Gary. Steve Haynes with Denver staff, and I've been working with Gary on this project since about 2016. So with that, we wanted to take this time to hear your thoughts, and so I'll go ahead and share my screen as to the presentation that was provided here yesterday. And we'll just start with this, but what we want to find out, of course, are your thoughts on some of the aspects of the project. And so I'm going to be asking questions and hoping that you folks can provide some responses. We've presented our structure overview, and given the mainline viaduct layout for your review as well. And then we also had the question and answer document that was passed out, sort of your homework for you to provide some responses, and we're anxious to see what some of those responses are, if you have those to share and so forth. And but anyway, as you know, the project extends from I-10 down there through the airport area. And so don't need to belabor so much of that. We want to try to get right into, you know, let's see, I may not have shared this correctly. So I might have stopped sharing and then redo this through the alternatives and so forth. Let me redo that. Stop sharing. I need to share my desktop, I think. Sorry about that.
So while he's looking for that, can you guys see the slide on the screen with the 3 girder types? Whoops.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So let's get that. All right. Here we go. Okay. All right. So it disappeared on me. Apologies. All right. So in our meeting room here, we have, you know, we presented a lot of information, and just starting with some of these items and elements, we wanted to get your feedback, and beginning with some of the retaining wall alternatives. And our goal is to, you know, determine what you know, sort of textures and so forth are favorable to everybody, you know, and these context sensitive solutions. It's all about representing, you know, safety first of all and foremost, but also the historical elements and the aesthetic elements that are near and dear to the community's heart, and to just try to show what you'd like to see presented, you know, in your community, you know, as far as some of these graphics and so forth. And if you have other patterns and so forth that can be presented as well, or considered, that's a possibility, because, you know, these particular MSC type walls are precast panels that can be you know, have all sorts of elaborate patterns and so forth, and they just reprint those kind of like in mosaic, and kind of like in a shower stall or something else. And so each one of those panels that goes up can have that particular pattern, but of course has to repeat to some degree in order to maintain economics. So didn't know if any of these, have these jumped out at people as to what they prefer to see, or have they, you know, been much consideration in that regard yet?
Yeah, I don't think, this is Troy Wayman. I'm not sure there's been a lot of consideration. There was a question that came up Tuesday on the call about these patterns. Personally, I really like the natural texture, but I also recognize that there may be more opportunity for to show our culture in some of the other patterns, which makes a lot of sense. But the question came up that, and I don't think it was ever addressed because it was in the chat, but I think it kind of got lost in some of the chat, was, do any of these textures, like the natural, for example, that looks great, but considering the environment that we live in, keeping that clean would be, I think, a lot more difficult than some of the other patterns.
Yeah. So looking at it from just a sustainability point of view, I suppose.
Right.
Right. And yeah, there's some, you know, finishes that are, you know, more of a deterrent to graffiti and so forth than others. This one may not be one of those. I don't know. But
well, I was thinking more of things like mold and mildew.
Oh, okay.
With the humidity and you know, the amount of pressure washing that we have to do to our houses and things like that is pretty significant. So
yeah. Okay, so we can mark that down there. So any other comments on the walls?
mean, I think it's a fair point from Troy. This is Sam. And, but I think that there's an economical way to have something that is a little more unique to the space and the area through a printed pattern that, you know, shows a local character, I think that could be highly desirable. I think it would be interesting to, you know, see if that, see what effect that has in terms of maintenance. But I could see that being a really great way to plug in the local community and show them kind of reflected in this big project.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Agreed.
When you think of local community, what sort of patterns come to mind, you know, from your perspective?
I mean, I couldn't say specifically, but I think, you know, having the opportunity for some sort of local engagement in that process. But I think about either, you know, local flora. I know y'all pointed out the Palmetto interchange or whatever that was in Florida. But you know, flora could be part of it. There's certainly a lot of native plants that could be kind of conjured, especially thinking about the trajectory of this roadway going across the Vermilion. But certainly other, you know, just kind of either architectural elements from the community. There are certain styles that are specific to the areas that the road goes through. Or, you know, who knows what. But I think the opportunity for a little bit of like public involvement in that within very specific boundaries, obviously, could be really well received locally.
And I mean, it's some thought that local, you know, involvement and commitment to some of these, you know, patterns and so forth provide a sense of pride that is also a deterrent to, you know, some vandalism, but that's subjective, of course. But it's definitely important to get them involved in, you know, the engagement aspect. So, but okay, well, I don't want to belabor that too much. I mean, if we have a lot to go over, so we'll just move on to
Steve, this is Gary. Let me just chime in just for a second. And that's great feedback. That's really what we wanted to hear. And Bradley that presented on Tuesday, he's got some excellent ideas how to work with the communities. He's done that many times before on different type of projects like this. So he's going to be an excellent resource to really dig down with you guys, with the communities, you know, the neighborhoods, and really kind of settle on a theme, you know, whether it's more the natural texture or the imagery or something else even.
How many retaining wall areas like this are there throughout the project?
Well, we've got a bridge abutment type wall up between Willow and I-10.
right.
And then once we come down off of the elevated structure on the south side of Pinhook, there will be another similar opportunity for that type of wall. And then for all the ramps, they will have abutments as well as they come down from the bridge elevated structures and tie in closer to grade. So at each of the bridge ends, that's really where we have the opportunity, one of the opportunities to do something like this, right?
It doesn't have to be just one theme. I mean, take a project that went from about 9 miles through Denver here, where they, you know, varied the themes along the project. It had a overall theme, and then it graduated from one type of environment, you know, from the mountains down to the plains. But you know, so there's nothing like to say that, you know, it's just this is it. You know, once you pick a pattern, that's all that's allowed. You know, there's easily.
And that's a good point too, because, you know, we mentioned the big long viaduct structure with the two bridge ends and the ramps in between. But we also have some fairly significant sections of wall in the University Surrey interchange area. We haven't sketched those up just yet. We're still working on fine tuning the horizontal and vertical geometry, but that's going to be another opportunity. It's close to the airport. I know in the previous phase of work, Stephen Piku, the airport director, really wanted some input and make that interchange kind of a gateway to and from the airport areas. So that's another opportunity to either do something different or tie a similar theme along the entire corridor.
Absolutely. And I think if the opportunity exists for them to be different distinct spaces, I mean, each of those is an opportunity for a little community engagement and a little more buy-in locally. I think if that's an easy way to do that, which it sounds like it might be, then I think that's a great idea.
Stephen Parati here. I would echo that opportunity to kind of tell a story at each opportunity, at each wall opportunity that is relevant to the area in relationship to that wall. Two other quick thoughts, or one's a thought, one's a question. I would say I'm not in favor of a natural texture because while I'm new to Louisiana, I'm not sure of natural textures that would be used to, so it'd be a completely faux facade. And that just kind of, disenfranchises. It tells a false story, just my opinion. And then secondly, as we, it would be great to tell a different story that reflects the community on either side at each intersection, but is that going to add costs? And I hate to belabor the cost thing, but it all comes down to money eventually. So I don't want to set ourselves up for, yeah, it's a great idea, but if it's not a reality, let's nip that type of stuff in the bud early so that we're not setting ourselves up for disappointments later on.
Yeah, it's the panels are are the form liners, and the form liners can be created by artists and so forth. But each one does cost a little, have a premium to it. That I wouldn't say that it's extravagant, depending on how repetitive the panels are over such and such a distance. But it's not like you're going to create a new panel each wall necessarily, but a new theme. And those aren't all that bad, but we had some very, very large panels to contend with, and some of those got a little bit expensive because they had so much change in detail, from panel to panel for some noise walls, and I don't think we want that. But anyway, it's a thought, so that's I wouldn't dismiss it just because of cost just yet, but to put it out there to see what the implications are of something that could be developed by the community, because each community has their own demographic and so forth. So what's favorable to one community may not be as favorable to another, and so over the stretch of the project, perhaps there's some opportunity there. But I'll let you guys talk to that. So, enough for me. All right. Any more on walls? Okay. I guess I'd like to go right now then to, let's talk about, right here, some of the design options as far as the girders and piers and so forth. I mean, what are the thoughts on the depths of the girders and so forth, the heights of the columns, et cetera? And the types of girders. Right here, we're looking at the line girders, and in a 22-foot scenario, and then we get the change in the column type and so forth. So a lot of options here to consider, and not saying we've even exhausted all of the opportunities. And here you have the U girder shape and a different column style. The capitals change, and that's another column shape and so forth. And then this cone shapes this thing. So had there much thought been put into reviewing these, or should we throw all these out and start over? So let's speak if you have any thoughts on that.
What was the SB girder, the final one that was kind of in the list?
The SG, yeah.
Yeah. I know it was the most expensive on cost, but it was also a little less expensive on.
Yeah, this one opens up. The segmental has some advantages. We believe it's a little more complex type of structure to build, but it has we have such a long viaduct that the repetition really allows for some advantages with respect to schedule, maintaining pier lengths such that you can construct from pier to pier, minimizes the shoring, and also it's just very, very clean on the bottom of the structure without the pier caps. You know, you just compare just from here, looking at the pier caps and so forth that tend to clutter. And then this, you can compare it to this one, you know, the segmental, and just how clean it is overall is just, you know, really appealing, I think. And then, you know, the heights too can be adjusted to allow more light underneath. And there was some talk about having, you know, just public events and so forth underneath these, underneath the structure and so forth. So having fewer columns and, you know, an openness about it has a lot of merit, and letting more light in, etc. I don't want to be the one doing all the talking here, even though it's just.
Yeah.
I'll take a stab here. Stephen Parati, again, I'm representing for those the Laplace Coterie community neighborhood. Now, one of the things that concerns us is not so much the through traffic structure, but, you know, real pedestrian scale neighborhood to neighborhood traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So just on my limited understanding on the presentation yesterday, it would seem that the SB girder having less structure, you know, less piers, a cleaner look would allow more continuous neighborhood to neighborhood connectivity.
Right.
And also, you know, I think the very first one, the LG there was a diagram that showed how many planes there were.
Yeah.
Like, again, I'm new to the community, new to South Louisiana, but I am amazed at what grows and where, and my God, it's impressive. So to have less, you know, nooks and crannies for things to
Mm-hmm.
grow and, you know, collect debris, dirt, etc.
Yeah.
That's kind of our concern and thought from Laplace.
Okay.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, you see some of these where I'm not sure what problems you might have there, but in some areas you have sparrows and so forth. They create, you know, nests underneath these things and on the bottom flanges of the line girders. So that can be a maintenance headache. But either one of these, the U-girder or the segmental, of course, the U-girder still has the cap, the drop cap, and so, you know, there's that visible feature as compared to the segmental, of course. I looked at it and how just very clean underneath. That's the advantage of it. And also we're seeing a possibility of a schedule issue such that I believe that the segmental might cut about 12 months off the construction period of the project. So, and also minimize the amount of false work underneath. So, you know, the MOT, maintenance of traffic, becomes a lot easier to deal with. And while we're on maintenance of traffic, has much thought been given to that by the communities?
Well, just staying on the topic of community connectivity, before we move away from that,
All right.
just I do think from that perspective as well, you know, number of obstructions is one thing, but also just like the broader visual obstruction of, you know, the road itself. You know, I know we saw the difference between the 22-foot height and the 30-foot height. I don't know if we're talking about that later, but to me, when we talk about connectivity and between neighborhoods and walkability and the possible uses of the underspace for any purpose other than blight, to me, that, you know, that further raising of the structure is more impactful to me, in my opinion, than any of the other like girder or, you know, cap methods.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one carries just more value, especially when we were just quoted, I know offhand, the like $15 million differential versus, you know, maybe a 70 or $80 million differential for one girder type to another.
Right. And here we're looking at some of the heights and so forth. Line girders, U girders.
I'm a real visual. I need like real world examples. Are there examples